Hello to everyone. Today, again, Istanbul Aydın University Blockchain Academy Blockchain Talks has a very valuable and distinguished speaker. Our speaker is from England. His name is Matthew Christensen. And we met Matthew and we discussed some matters on the AI. And we saw that Matthew is very knowledgeable and doing also research on AI and education. Therefore, today, the title of our discussion, or better said, the Matthew will talk on AI and education. Just very short, I would like to remind you, Matthew Christensen is not a researcher, he is the researcher in Oxford University. Matthew, welcome.
Thank you.
To our webinar. So I would like to really not waste time and give the floor to you. And we are very curious to listen to you, what you are going to share with us on AI and education. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Erol. And thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you here today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see the slides? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So today we're going to focus on talking about all aspects of AI in education. So I'm going to go through some current use cases, AI's impacts on cognition and brain development for children, and some lessons that we can learn from research that's been done on social media. We'll go through a bit on the laws governing AI in education, some emerging trends in education technology, which are super exciting. Also some ideas around protections that we need to think about in regards to preparing for the future, and close with some exciting use cases for AI in the future. So a bit about me. I think as Erol made an introduction, I'm currently part of a research team at Oxford University, examining applications of AI in education and designing systems to protect children, which we'll go into a bit more later. I'm also a fellow at a Dubai-based foundation that provides social policy recommendations to governments, and on my second year of research into education gaps in East Africa. Before COVID, I had built an online accredited course aggregator and student management platform that gave youth in Asia the ability to earn US high school diplomas, and then through our scholarship partners, gave them the ability to study university in the US. And I'm currently an educator and mentor for a group of African startups. And in my previous life, I was a corporate lawyer, which will make sense when we start digging a bit into the laws. I provided my LinkedIn, and I'll circulate the slides after in case anybody is interested. So starting with some current use cases. Education, AI in education falls into four main classes. The first being teacher support tools, the most popular being automated assessments, creation and grading, and class management tools. And so if there's any educators in the audience, you'd understand the amount of time outside classroom that teachers spend creating lesson plans and grading assignments. And so while these admin AI tools haven't necessarily changed the amount of time teachers interact with students, it has decreased their overall workload outside of class time, which is a very positive step for a profession that is rather underpaid and overworked in most of the world. The second class is teacher augmentation. And so on the right is some screenshots from a company called Lumino Learning. This is a fascinating startup and represents what I consider to be the future of classroom education, where teachers wear mixed reality glasses while students are completing tasks on computers. And the teacher can see in real time which students are struggling, what exactly they're struggling on, along with metrics on the class as a whole. I think this is quite innovative because it gives teachers real-time insights into what's happening on the computers, and teachers then have the ability to help on either an individual basis or provide instruction to the entire class as students are completing the work instead of waiting for feedback from assessments. The third category is intelligent adaptive learning platforms. And so previously, the old way of learning platforms was really just essentially digitizing traditional content and then tracking progress as students work through that content, which was very much the case in 2018 when I built my first startup. And it's really only begun to change in the last couple of years now that consumer AI has come onto the market. And so the new adaptive learning systems are very much using AI and big data analysis in order to provide some hyper-personalized content. And so I provided some links in the slides to a company called Dreambox, which I consider to be one of the best adaptive learning platforms on the market. And so their algorithm collects data on every nuance of education, from not only what you click, but how long it takes, whether your cursor hovers over different choices, which ones, etc. And they're really able to provide, I think, the most hyper-personalized content pathways that I've seen on the market yet today. And then the fourth category is supplemental mobile apps, such as Duolingo for language learning, which I think people in the audience are probably pretty familiar with. And so while there's many positive benefits for these use cases, I really consider the use of AI in education to be the next round of unregulated mass experimentation on a generation of children, similar to the way in which social media was unleashed on Gen Z a decade ago. Because once again, society is rapidly adopting advanced technologies that change the way we think and behave without first researching their impacts. However, this time around, we do have abundant research on how social media shaped a generation of children, and we can draw inferences about the likely impacts with regards to AI. And so the research has shown some pretty key permanent cognitive changes in children. There was a Stanford study that found that youth have difficulty retaining information due to the sort of passive engagement without reflection that takes place through digital content, as well as a University of California, Los Angeles study that linked regular social media use to reduced attention spans and negative impacts on sustained focus, both of which are critical for deep learning and cognitive development. And so AI seems to be amplifying a lot of these impacts. And while the research is relatively recent, so preliminary findings from a review of available studies are a bit concerning. When AI is used for schoolwork, the development of critical reasoning and the ability to evaluate information is being impeded. AI has also been shown to inhibit the development of problem-solving skills by removing that sort of productive struggle through effort that's vital for cognitive growth that we're used to in the classroom. And AI for schoolwork, also tends to promote this sort of surface level engagement, where if AI is solving math problems for you or generating summaries of books, students have found to tend to rely on the system rather than trying to figure out the answers for themselves. And students who regularly use AI for homework are becoming dependent on AI to sort of think for them, which is impairing their ability to develop, this sort of independent reasoning skills for themselves. But what's most worrying to me actually is the studies that we've seen in brain chemistry regarding to dopamine, which is the pleasure or reward neurotransmitter, that's showing how regular social media use leads to dopamine dependency comparable to substance addiction, because these algorithms are designed to rapidly condition the brain to crave constant stimulation and reward. However, dopamine is also very closely linked to motivation and reinforcement learning, which is why gamified learning algorithms also tap into the same dopamine system. And so there was this idea I came across of a digital Skinner box. It comes from the book Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff, where she draws on the psychological concepts of operant conditioning, which is the idea that when animals were placed in boxes, their behavior could be conditioned through rewards or punishments. By pressing a lever might release some food or reward, or prevent a pleasant stimulus, which would be a punishment, which shapes the animal's future behavior by reinforcing certain actions. And Zuboff goes on to argue that digital platforms like gamified learning apps operate like modern-day Skinner boxes for humans, where these platforms use the algorithms to create environments where the behaviors of users are continuously shaped and rewarded in real time. And so I asked the question, is offering children a preferred addiction the best way to use AI for education? I mean, it's still out on that. So I wanted to spend a bit of time on the laws governing AI, just to provide a bit of an overview. And so there's three main examples of how AI is being regulated today. The first one is in the US, where big tech essentially writes its own rules, and they've avoided any binding laws by promising to regulate itself. The US is one of the few countries that doesn't implement GDPR, sort of global internet safety standards, and has very limited data privacy, which really only provides protections for children under 13. In the United Kingdom, the UK supports more of a light touch, principles-based framework for regulators. So they interpret AI within existing laws, sector-specific laws, and really don't see AI any different than any other technology. Though the UK does have what they call an age-appropriate design code, which requires education platforms that use AI to follow standards which are primarily focused on data privacy. However, the EU, in August of this year, passed the AI Act, which is I would say the best piece of law regarding AI we have in the world right now. And the AI Act takes a risk-based approach to regulation, where education is considered a high-risk category when using AI. And so when AI is used in deciding admissions into school, steering learning in regards to guiding education pathways, testing, and in assessing education levels or access that students will be able to receive. And so the AI Act, fortunately, also provides rules regarding AI in education for risk management and data governance, transparency, and importantly, human oversight in terms of how AI is used in education. The AI Act actually outlines a few prohibited uses for AI in education. The most relevant for today being the two on the screen, where when AI exploits vulnerabilities due to age or economics, with the effect of distorting behavior in a way that's likely to cause significant harm. And the other one is when AI deploys subliminal techniques beyond a person's consciousness. And so with the effect of distorting behavior, causing them to take a decision they would not otherwise have taken in a manner that's likely to cause significant harm. And so these are sort of forward-looking clauses in the AI Act in terms of thinking about where technology is headed as opposed to what's commercially available today when the law passed. And so I asked the question, based on what we know from studies on social media and sort of the preliminary research on the impacts of artificial intelligence in regards to children, do we consider impairing the development of cognitive functioning while strengthening addiction pathways in the brain to be significant harm to children? This is a legal question that hasn't been tested yet, but the technologies that will challenge this act are quickly coming on the horizon. And so what makes the AI Act especially important is the global reach that EU regulations have. On the plus, it's the only piece of legislation that provides specific protections for children in education. And it does make an attempt to address the negative impacts of AI on cognitive development. However, even though this AI Act was passed in August of 2024, it doesn't become effective until 2026. And given the advancement and speed of AI, it's likely that many provisions are going to be outdated by the time it comes into force. I'd like to switch gears and talk about some of the emerging trends in AI and how it's being used for education. The first layer is the AI tutors. And so this is super exciting because through ChatGPT and other sort of proprietary LLMs, students now have the ability to access a personal mentor and tutor that provides real-time assistance and support 24 hours a day. And the conversational capabilities through natural language processing are also really promising for helping students to develop social skills in terms of having a conversational partner that they can essentially trust that isn't going to divulge information in a social space. The second layer is advances in augmented reality, virtual reality, plus the metaverse. This is super exciting because we're sort of seeing augmented lessons coming out where students have access to holograms and science and being able to take apart dioramas, and actually a lot of advances in this in education with respect to you being able to use these technologies. Immersive learning tours, museum tours, and places that students wouldn't otherwise get a chance to go is also quite fascinating. As well as, I've seen some companies that are developing role playing using VR and the metaverse for soft skills development in terms of helping kids develop perspective taking and being able to sort of empathize with others. The third layer, which is emerging in the space now, is actually the brain-computer interfaces. And so there's a number of companies listed that have either already released certain technologies or on the horizon, noting that Meta, Facebook, is planning on a neural interface watch plus glasses for next year. The sensor data on brainwave signals from headsets and changes in your blood pulse from smartwatches can decode changes in thought patterns, and you can make inferences from that. And so there's already neural sensors being widely embedded in Apple AirPods and most mid to top line headphones from next year. And so these technologies are being rapidly adopted by corporations and released to the public, yet we don't really have any rules governing how that data is being collected and used. And while these technologies are super fascinating on their own, what really becomes transformative is their convergence. And once we start integrating all these technologies together through big data processing with AI, and that's where I think we get some really transformative changes in education. And so what I put down as the layer 4 is a sort of context-aware AI, where we have the ability to guide students into, fully realistic immersive experiences simulating the real world to the degree that the brain begins losing distinction between physical and virtual reality. This is very much on the horizon, and where we're headed in terms of all of these technologies beginning to come together. It's super exciting in terms of the potential for education and really being able to innovate in a traditional space in a super exciting way. But it's also deeply concerning in terms of considering the potential for misuse of such a powerful technology. And so what we need is legal protections for cognitive development in education. And so what's fascinating is that in 2021, the South American nation of Chile became the first country in the world to enact constitutionally protected human rights, ensuring that human thoughts, emotions, and mental states remain private and protected from neural technology. And so 3 key aspects of that law that got written into their constitution is a cognitive liberty, the legal right to be certain that your thoughts are your own. Mental privacy, meaning that your brain data is an extension of your personal identity and deserves the same level of legal protection, as well as psychological integrity, meaning that you have full control over your thoughts without interference from governments or corporations. Now, this may seem really a science fiction, but as we've seen from the technologies, we're not too far out from these legal protections really being necessary to protect people from misuse of these technologies. And so while all of these rights now apply to Chileans, it's especially important for children who will be exposed to neural technologies at an age when their brains are still developing. And so the risks of negative and permanent impacts to cognition in education are significant. In the links below, I've linked to a couple of TED Talks by Nita Farahani, who's a law and bioethics professor at Duke University in the US. She goes a bit deeper in terms of explaining the need for cognitive liberty as a human right, and to protect us from misuse from AI and neurotech from governments and corporations. So if anybody's interested, she's sort of the leading voice in that space. We also need protective AI and education design standards. And so this is a quick summary of the work being undertaken by our team at Oxford, social science researchers, psychologists, neuroscientists. Rather than waiting for governments to pass laws, we're taking a private sector approach by implementing protective design standards for the use of AI in education by employing a carrot and stick system of credentialing coupled with funding. And so our stick is a global credentialing body that will certify tech companies deploying AI for education as having incorporated ethical design standards into their platforms that protect the cognitive development of children. A few of the relevant standards that we discussed today are summarized in the slides. Our carrot is a venture capital fund that we set up that provides financial and strategic support to startups that are intentionally designing AI and education platforms to counteract the negative impacts that we discussed earlier. By focusing on using AI to help children develop those core cognitive skills needed to become fully independent, self-aware, critical thinkers. So we think that with a combination of public sector support and private sector incentives, as a society, we can put in place the necessary protection mechanisms for AI to radically transform education for the benefit of both current and future generations. And so some of the emerging applications of AI in education that I've come across in talking with developers around the world that are really fascinating to me are these fully immersive experiences that have a lot of potential for positive impacts on children in education. The first one is around awareness. And so there's a startup in Thailand that's developing a large language model based on the collective teachings of top Buddhist monks. And when combined with immersive technologies, the idea is to create a virtual temple where children can go to learn about self-awareness, reflection, meditation, and other teachings of Buddhism. And so this same idea can be applied to imagining one-on-one sessions with an AI counselor trained on the works of any expert, where the experience itself feels like a session with the live person, and it really helps to get people to open up, but also to feel like you're talking just in a conversation with a therapist or counselor rather than with a piece of technology. Second being learning from history. And so this idea around, sort of debating democracy with Plato, and an AI that can reason critically and give advice by being context aware of present day scenarios and how they fit into the historical writings of ancient philosophers. And so being able to have a Socratic dialogue on the nature of the Republic with Socrates is such an exciting way to educate that is very much on the horizon. I also think experiencing world events as they took place, and so fully immersive, simulated realities of historical events are essentially time travel in terms of being able to experience events as they took place through a virtual immersive experience. I'm also really excited about the ability for AI in education to help create empathy. And so one idea that I want to build, if there's any developers out there, is a series of experiences where a child AI is giving tours to real children and talking about its life in places like Amazon tribal communities or refugee camps. I mean, I believe that the only way we're able to move towards a better society is through increased empathy for one another. And that social education is just as important as maths and grammar. And this is where I think AI can play a huge role in fostering cross-cultural understanding through perspective taking, by creating realistic experiences where children actually are able to viscerally relate with what their peers are experiencing on the other side of the world. Lastly, reconnecting with nature. I believe that one of the main reasons why we as humans are destroying our habitat is because we all live in cities and we've lost our connection to nature. And so immersive AI is one way to help educate and reconnect people with the planet by providing virtual experiences which may motivate children to seek out the real thing. Finally, I want to touch on equal access to education, AI. One of the connecting themes of my work is the importance I place on providing accessible, high-quality education for those at the bottom of the economic pyramid. And so throughout my work in emerging and frontier markets around the world, I've seen how normal it is for kids to be crammed 40, 50 into a classroom with outdated textbooks, limited access to technology. And so too often formal education ends after primary school because kids must enter the workforce to help support their families. And from there, any education these youth receive is from YouTube. And so for most of the world, we need AI to supplement a severe shortage of human teachers and provide digital education resources where physical materials and quality human action simply don't exist. However, the problem with YouTube, as many people probably know, is that the algorithm isn't designed with the benefits to the user in mind. It's designed to keep eyes glued to the screen by promoting attention-grabbing content instead of recommending quality videos a person would need for development. And so I believe that AI has the potential to democratize education in regions of the world with limited access to resources by offering personalized learning through the smartphones. And so if you imagine your AI tutor has access to a YouTube algorithm designed specifically for youth skills development that helps to identify a person's strengths and guides them on a learning journey of free YouTube content of all the necessary skills that they would need to become a micro entrepreneur. Through applications of AI in education, this is where we really get to impact at scale in places where formal education is lacking and work in the formal sector is largely unavailable. And these sort of transformative impacts, I think, are only possible through applications of AI in education. And so in closing, I just want to say that if we design education AI for those who need it most, but can least afford it, and create strong protections for those who are most vulnerable, we'll build a better world for the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew Christensen. Thank you for your real informative speech. I think we are all discussing today AI need and what will be in the future. But when we look also from the view of education, we could say, yes, we need AI, but to a certain extent in every aspect. So I would like to ask to participants whether they want to add something, any comments or any question. No. Okay. I would like to ask one question. Do you think as timing to use AI in education, when it could be possible in real terms?
I mean, it depends on the application. I mean, AI is already being used in varying ways in education today. But a lot of those use cases are still limited to, the US, UK, Europe, sort of highly developed countries. Whereas being able to have the use of AI at scale in emerging markets and the rest of the world, it's still on the horizon. I think we're still at the stage of exploring how ChatGPT and sort of, API customizations can be used in the education space. And, it really is a sector that there has to be a degree of, I would say, passion in terms of development in education, because it's not as profitable as a purely commercial application. And so I think as more commercial use cases come on board and online, then we'll find comparable use cases in the education space. And so the development will probably take place first for purely commercial use, and then we'll see, oh, we can use this in education, and this can be applied elsewhere. And so it really takes developers who are thinking about how can we transfer this technology for the benefit of education and for use for children.
Thank you, Matthew. AI and education was the subject, better said, the title of today at Istanbul Aydın University Blockchain Academy Blockchain Talks. And our guest speaker, presenter was Matthew Christensen from Oxford University. Matthew, thank you very much for sharing information with us. And thank you giving us the time and opportunity to listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you.